To formally set the tone for today's proceedings, I now invite Dr. Pradeep Chatterjee, Advisor, L&D and Corporate Relations of Geo Institute, to deliver the welcome address. Please join me in welcoming him with a hearty round of applause.
A very warm welcome and wish you a very good afternoon. Dignitaries who have assembled here for today's conclave, my colleagues, the faculty members, and my dear students. This is essentially the first conclave of this batch, batch of 26. And this conclave is going to set the pace and the path for your next 1 year with us. Now, I was reading somewhere that every single individual every day takes 35,000 decisions. And we are not even aware of it. With this new invent of AI and DS and so on and so forth, the world that we have lived in and have arrived till now, and the world that you will enter after you finish this program and by the time you retire, the entire dynamics of the world, the human space and the human mind will change. The way we thought that life existed will exist, the way we planned our lives and whatever made us go through our lives till today will be much, much different than the life that you will see. So the reason that we are holding this conclave, and as you know in Geo Institute, we keep on doing different programs for you people on an everyday basis, has got a very, very simple paradigm. It's because we believe that either you upgrade your knowledge or you will have to downgrade your expectations. So most of us, when we enter a program, and I'm making it a very little non-AIDS part of the talk, when we enter a program, the first thing that a student looks at is what are the package that I'll get. Coming from old school, let me tell you, the package is a byproduct. And I always keep saying that any program that you enter, and most of the students or the kids of this generation are much more intelligent than what we were, you all start creating or understanding a concept called ROI. So you say, what is it that I've invested that I want to go get back? But my way of looking at ROI is a little different. Because I believe that when you look at anything in the world financially, you will always expect a return. But if you look at anything where you are emotionally invested, you will always want to contribute. And if you learn the art of contributing, which means you are emotionally invested in something that you are learning, money, salary, and ROI will become the byproduct. And let me tell you that byproduct will be far larger, much better than the ones who are looking at an ROI from day one and thinking that should I take a job which is 8 lakhs per annum or should I take a job and I wait for a job which is 16 lakhs per annum. And let me tell you from experience, the guy who does not take a 8 lakhs per job per annum, when he gets the first or the second offer, he eventually does never get the job with the 16 lakhs per annum. Because I'm making myself explicitly clear. A job in hand and the experience that you get while working in it is an investment for tomorrow. If you wait for 6 months without a job, you will not even get this 8 lakhs, you'll get a 4 lakh job and you will take it because then desperation has set in. So my advice to all of you is when you get your first offer letter and you look at the job description, look at it whether you want to work in that JD, not at the right hand number. Because you are today a learner and the company is taking you, you should be obliged to the organization. They are going to invest much more time and knowledge into you to create you. And again, I'm saying this, get emotionally invested in this program. All these dignitaries who will come on the stage, and not only this time, all of the people that you will see in the next 1 year who will come here, they're all stalwarts in their respective fields. But they will all tell you one story, how their life began. And all our lives began, and we reached where we reached by the number of hours that we inputted and the knowledge that we gained on our journey. So the question always asked in a football match is, who scores the highest goals? And more often than not, the answer given is the man who is at the right time at the right place. Correct? Gary Lineker, you must be knowing, English footballer, he was asked this question once. And he was asked, is it that the right man at the right place? He said, no. The guy who scores the maximum goals in a match is the guy who is at the right place, not at the right time, but at all times. Because only when he's there at all times in the right place, he will get the ball and a pass, which he will convert into the goal, and that happens not very often. Why I'm telling you this is that in this program, you need to be at all times. So I wish you all the very best. The dais will now be taken over by people, our guests today and dignitaries, who will tell you their stories and answer your questions. And I hope you make this session a very fruitful one and take home the best learning possible. Good luck and God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. Allow me to introduce the speakers for today. We have Mr. 𝗂𝙗𝙣𝙚𝙗𝙗, Head Engineering and Data Platform, Innoviti Technologies. Mr. 𝙗𝙗𝙣𝙚 brings extensive experience in building high-scale intelligent payment and analytics platforms for India's retail ecosystem. At Innoviti Technologies, his work enables smarter decision-making for merchants through real-time insights, fraud detection, and customer intelligence. With past roles in the 𝗏𝗏 Properties, Aditya Birla Capital, and GE, he is known for blending technical excellence with strategic execution, especially in the domains of fintech and customer experience. Please join us on stage, sir. Let's welcome him with a warm round of applause. We also have Mr. 𝗧𝙖𝙣𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙗, Transformation Advisor, Godrej. With a remarkable career spanning 28 years, Mr. Muzumdar stands at the forefront of enterprise AI transformation. At Godrej, he is pioneering the integration of GenAI across consumer goods, industrial, and manufacturing segments, making the leap from traditional digitization to intelligent automation. His deep expertise in AI governance, data architecture, and scalable implementation frameworks makes him a key voice in the evolving AI strategy landscape. Please join us on stage, sir. Let's welcome him with warm applause. We also have with us today Mr. Siddharth Sureka, who will be joining us online today. He is the Senior Executive Group Vice President and Chief AI Officer at Motilal Oswal Financial Services Limited. Mr. Sureka is one of the few senior leaders in India to hold a dedicated AI leadership role at the C-suite level. At Motilal Oswal, he has championed the AI-first thinking across investment, advisory, and client servicing verticals. From AI-powered marketing strategies to intelligent automation in customer support, his work reflects the convergence of finance and technology. A passionate advocate in responsible AI, he emphasizes transparency, explainability, and ethical use of AI in regulated industries. Let's give him a warm round of applause. We are truly honored to have these distinguished guests with us. We thank you for taking the time to share your expertise, and we eagerly look forward to your insights. To lead today's dialogue and navigate through the nuances of strategy, innovation, and AI adoption, I now invite our moderator, Mr. 𝗏𝗏𝙗𝗚𝙗, data scientist at Jio Platforms Limited and a proud alum of Jio Institute, to take charge of the session. Over to you, sir.
Hi guys, good evening, everybody. I have been a part at Geo Institute right here, and it's been amazing to be back here and moderating a section like this. Thank you for the good introduction of all the experts available here, and of mine too. I don't know even if I deserve that introduction. Okay, we'll try directly dive into it. We'll ask the first question to, of course, Mr. Siddharth, available online. Siddharth, as Chief of AI Officer at Motilal Oswal, you have driven AI in a traditional sector like finance. What were the biggest cultural hurdles, and how did you get leadership to commit to long-term AI investments?
First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for having the esteemed panel here. Uh, Apologize, couldn't be there physically, but really excited to be part of this. To come back to your question, we are living in a time and age where, since November 2022, where ChatGPT was launched, and the excitement thereof, from perspective of how AI can influence markets, how AI can influence enterprises, a lot of leadership have been thinking about it deeply, right? So I think the conversation has changed. By the way, can you all hear me? All right. So I think the conversation has shifted a little bit from perspective of influencing for buying to influencing to do it in the right architecture, influencing in the right way of leading the organization. What I imply by that here is a lot of the organization, when we think about AI, is led from an engineering lens, and that's great because a lot of commonalities exist. And then there are some interesting augmentation that you have to do when you're driving AI. Here is one thing, right? When we think about how these two fields are similar but different, there is a meticulous rhythm of exploration and exploitation. Depends upon the field you're in. The exploration is a little bit more versus exploitation. And when I say the term exploitation, I mean actually the execution here. So in a field of data science and AI, there is more exploration. You have to understand the business problem better. You have to understand the kind of models that exist and how do you evaluate that, versus in the field of software development, product development, where it's a little bit more in terms of exploitation. So how do we organize around AI was the main driving force at Motilal Oswal, so that everybody understands this is a different beast that we have to rein in and bring into the organization. As all of you know, there are enough research out there. More than 70% of the POCs fail to take off in our domain, right, as practitioners of AI and data science. And that's precisely, I think, one of the key reasons, because it's very product timeline software driven approach versus an AI driven approach. So I think when you have to influence the organization, you have to think about how do you lay out the organization, and hence chief AI officer role in laying out the organization from there off. And then how do we structure in terms of education, the exposure, and then experience around it for the products that we develop, and make sure our leadership is also buying into it, right? So when we think about education, you have to ensure that our leaders know that how software engineering and AI can be conducted in parallel with skill sets, right? When we think about exposure, we bring in a lot of our industry experts and speak with them so that our leadership are also getting educated and understand how things are working in another part of the industry. And more importantly, when we actually deliver on something very solid and get to that execution phase and put in production, that's when the magic happens. There's more trust, right? So once the trust is built, then it's an accelerating force for the organization. So that's what I would say. I think the conversation has shifted. It's how do we make sure our leadership is brought on to the new way of execution in the AI world.
So you said there are products being put up into production. So uh, what's the percentage like? So you come up with an idea, your entire team comes up with an idea, and then you experiment over it. And then you think, you of course convince the leadership about how we can get this into production and how it's going to give us some monetary benefits. How do you think, like, what are the percentages of ideas getting into production and how you proceed towards it?
Uh, right now, I would say about 40% of the products have moved into production, right? And the remaining 60, we have not killed any, thankfully. We are still experimenting because it's still early stages. So from that perspective, we have a very good start into this journey because we really started setting up this organization about 10 months back, right? So still very new and still early successes. So that's I would say that's the key thing. And what was the second question?
So the percentage part, so you said 40 percentage for ideas move into production. And so how do you convince the leadership that you should go ahead with this idea, let's experiment about it? I mean, there are certain metrics, right? You tell the leadership, you tell the business folks,
Yeah.
these are the metrics I think we can increment over it, get incremental progress over it, and then let's go ahead with it and then see if something can work out. So how do you tell up the business folks? Because of course they do not understand how AI works. They do get a part of it, but then the technical part they don't get it. So how do you like convince them? Okay, this is the part I tell you this is the metric. Metric wise, you are sorted, so we can go ahead with this and experiment over it.
There's two parts to it, right? First part is before we start the experimentation, we try to bring our business partners on board by aligning the use cases that we are picking to be more effective from a business lens, right? So the way we have structured our organization, there are 5 verticals which are primarily targeted to all of our business heads. And then there's one vertical which is for AI research that we keep out of metrics. So that way we can focus on that from a very nascent experimentation purpose and drive innovation from that front. But the rest of the verticals where we really intake from projects perspective are first and foremost very much business aligned. So that's starting point, right? So everybody's on board. The second point from this is how do we take this business objective that we have lent ourselves to really marshal towards and align from an attribution perspective of the value we'll generate. And that value would depend upon the kind of use cases that we align to, right? So if it's a very much a top line driven use cases, we measure ourselves to ensure that we are looking at conversions and revenue, incremental revenues that can generate. So think of you if you are an investor with Motilal Oswal, how can I help you understand that there are more investment vehicles that can help you create your wealth, right? And bring you in that journey. Because in the end of the day, the business of Motilal Oswal is to help all the investors create wealth. And when we think about creating wealth, they're actually buying a piece of freedom of tomorrow for themselves, right? So it's when we're trying to bring our investors into that journey, how many new investors have we brought on? And of the existing investors, how we are converting them into newer investment vehicles, right? So that's a top line use case driven metrics that we look at. While for productivity driven use cases, right? So we very recently went ahead and started implementing Copilot for our developers. So we are measuring the productivity gain of our developers, right? Similarly, we have implemented customer service productivity projects, such as customer service bots, email bots, right? So we are seeing how many touch points have we reduced and how have we increased our turnaround time, right? Because those are key metrics that the clients benefit from in the end of the day. And on our end, our business wins because we are serving our clients much better. So that's Once it's very tangible, it's much easier to continue to have that buy-in going forward.
Correctly. Thank you, Siddharth, for such a lovely response. Moving to you, Girish. Fintech moves fast, right? How do you balance AI innovation with governance at Innoviti? Any lessons from your playbook?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank Geo Institute for inviting me to the conclave. It's always amazing to be back in this beautiful environment. Like you, I share your joy in coming back here, man. On the question that you asked, first let me try to qualify AI. Okay, it's 15 years I've done it and I've never been able to understand. I've never been able to figure out what people believe when we say AI. What do they think in their minds when we say AI? I've been hearing it since 2007, 8 when I got into this entire space. If you ask me, even the block printing that was done in the Industrial Revolution would have been AI, right? As against manually weaving, For them that would have been as good as AI in those days. So it's a lot of and you guys come with a bit of background. So machine learning used to be called AI, okay, back in the day. And it was always difficult to figure out, okay, do they really mean if I make a model out using just logistic regression, is that AI? Okay, or today's day and age when we're using Gen AI, is that what people talk of when they say AI? And when I say AI, I mean Gen AI. Yeah, just qualifying that everything else is machine learning. ML are good old ML models, which are more, and I'll get to that later. It's half deterministic, if I may put it. In the payment space, it's particularly, I would say, frustrating because some of the data you just can't touch. Okay, so we are very, very strictly governed. We have a lot of regulatory restrictions in terms of what data we can see and what data we can't. Especially when you're talking about credit card data, the data literally flies past you. You can't even persist it. Okay, so you just watch the stream go past, just to kind of visualize it for you guys. But at the same time, with the necessary guardrails, so even if there are times when our physical servers which hold credit card data are kept separately, as against the rest of the data. It's that rigorously, restricted. So from a data point of view, from a governance and regulatory framework point of view, we are very particular. This goes way beyond PI information, all that, which is the challenge that all industries would have. We have very specific issues when it comes to specific card information. So if you want to know, for example, you want to tell your merchant, okay, these kind of, or you want to go to your bank partner and say, these cards are being used. You can't do that, right? So that's because you don't have access to that granularity of information, and you have to hence work with hashed data and so on. So that's kind of the way we manage our governance. The real challenge comes when we start applying Gen AI on top of this data, and there you have to be so careful that the data that goes to the LLMs, okay, you have to be extremely straitjacketed when it comes to that the kind of information that goes out. We take a lot of pain to ensure that our data is very secure, hashed. Nothing goes out into the LLM, which is even remotely risky for us. We are subject to very tight audits. But at the same time, and we will discuss this over the course of our panel discussion, it does help open up a lot of interesting use cases. So while we have one very strong foot on the pedal to accelerate on the GenAI front, we also have very strict guardrails in terms of what data goes through. And I can just share in closing that one thing that we do is we have a human in the loop concept. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, it's like we don't allow the pipeline to go straight from data to action. We have a human being in between who does a validation before it goes out into the end action. That is something that it may sound like a blocker to the efficiency, but in our business it is a necessity. So technically we call it human in the loop. Yeah, so that's one thing I can tell you. And in fact, it's an interesting concept that was brought out by your team some months ago. He actually referred to going from creating to curating. And that's a brilliant way of putting things. So yes, so we have a human curator who kind of is filtering out the output. So
Got it, got it. So, as you mentioned, there is a human in the loop, right? And we are talking about GenAI applications on payment gateways particularly. Uh, what are the applications wherein we would be seeing not such an influence of a human, I mean, not the humans in the loop, and it's completely entirely automated GenAI pipeline?
okay, let me. If it's not to do with the payments flow, let's look at the way the data flows. Right? So let's take an example of your typical shop in the corner who sells mobile phones. Just to give you an example. So what that the guy in the shop does is he gets a lot of schemes. So when you walk into these stores, you are told, okay, there's an offer on so and so bank, right? You get a no cost EMI, or you get a low cost EMI for 6 months, and you'll get an instant cashback of so much. All those are what we call schemes. Okay, so these are schemes which come from the banks and the brands put together. Okay, and we take this data and we present it to the merchant, to our merchants, to the shopkeeper, to put it in layman's language. There's a lot of scope of using GenAI to automate a lot of our processes. Okay, so you can imagine all the brands, mobile brands, right? Samsung, Vivo, Oppo, Xiaomi, you got a plethora of brands and you got a plethora of banks. So it's an N by N combination that we are sitting with. So that every month and through the month, we get a humongous amount of schemes that keep flowing through. And traditionally, in the payments business, you have a posse of people who are manually looking at all this data, and the data, trust me, comes pretty, it's not structured. Okay? It comes in emails, within Excel sheets, sales people start typing, oh, you have to split the subvention between the banks in this ratio. It's all written in English. Okay, and there's somebody reading all that English and putting stuff up. All of that can be pipelined to a GenAI solution. And you may need probably one last, validator in the loop, but there's a whole amount of, manual intervention that can be knocked off. So just to give you one example of how, we can bring in GenAI to
Completely
to have a huge bumper in our efficiencies in this space.
got it, got it. Thank you for your lovely response, Girish. Mr. Sh, I have a question for you. So, how do you coach leaders to embrace data first thinking into legacy sectors, such as finance, let's say, or any other legacy sector, insurance?
Hello. So I think first of all, good afternoon everyone, and thanks Geo Institute for this wonderful opportunity to interact. Coming to your question, I think so. We are switching the context a little bit here. Okay, so what we have been talking about is more like the application of AI in probably consumer context, and then you are able to imagine that, right? Because media is covering that. You are yourself experiencing that in many places, like in terms of the examples that Rakesh provided, etc. Now, when it comes to enterprise context, okay, this is a slightly probably an unknown area when you see it from outside. Okay, and the enterprise context has got obviously the leadership element and stuff like that, and it's not an easy job. Okay, it's very difficult actually, and it's not me just saying that. Recently, there has been kind of coverage by McKinsey and Gartner on these topics, right? And I think one of the probably most stumbling block or the opposition that comes to AI adoption in large enterprises seems to be from leadership cadre. Okay, so that is what the kind of stuff is. And then why does it happen? Okay, so probably there are two things. So either there is a very high over expectation from the impact that it's going to create, or otherwise there is a undue fear. Okay, the minds of leadership. So I think when it comes to transformation of enterprise, it's extremely critical that we basically enable a conversation, a roadmap in terms of onboarding the leadership and having a kind of sort of dialogue at various levels and maybe harmonize the kind of AI adoption with the core values that organization represents and the operational impact it's going to create. Okay, so for the purpose of kind of coaching the leadership, we take a multi-level approach, obviously, because organizations do have multiple levels at which,
Hierarchy.
hierarchical and also sometimes strategically organized to represent different interests, different segments and stuff like that. So, so at a very top level leadership level, it's a slightly different situation in terms of bringing in how exactly the external world is changing, the kind of impact it's going to have, the impact probably, and then how do we basically, as I said, harmonize that with the core values of organizations, so on and so forth. So that's what we typically do. And then we roll it down in terms of a more operational specific kind of coaching for mid-level management, stuff like that. So that is what we have been doing, and at least in my current organization and even the past organization, we rolled out a very extensive program, and not only in terms of one-way training, but also in terms of a communication and people engagement aspect to basically bring them on board. And then obviously it doesn't stop. The organization is finally made up of people, right? So at an individual level, what is the impact? Okay, so our principle kind of that we adopted is like probably there is going to be 30% of impact on individual job, and how do we make it like look like positive rather than negative in terms of the improved productivity, maybe the time they can invest in other things, so on and so forth. Okay, because the job loss is a serious concern that I think not only at the organization level, world level, that AI has created. You might be reading about World Economic Forum addressing these issues, and even the individual governments and the responsible approach that basically that is being recommended everywhere, and it's going to have an impact, like for sure. Okay, but how to basically make that impact more sustainable in terms of not having a glaring situation is obviously is one of the aspects, and as I said, it's baked into the organizational values in the end. So
Got it. So, I mean, I can pretty well much connect with it because I saw a guy somewhere and he's doing a startup into people are doing vibe coding. They are developing software, go up to a chatbot, ask if this is the use case, then get the code implemented, put up an application. The guy has done a startup in doing what that he's trying to figure out the errors into it because the vibe coders cannot eventually know where is the error and what is going wrong. So yeah, I mean, pretty much I think going forward, as you're saying, AI is going to take jobs. Probably people who do not know the underlying under the hood implementations and all, of course, they are at risk. But people who know things at fundamental level, they would be flourishing in this. So
if I could just add one nuance to what Rick was saying, very interesting point on the job insecurity aspect, and it is there everywhere. The way we look at it in Innoviti is to we tend to hire people to do menial tasks. You know, a lot of people. In fact, 70 to 80% of the workforce is not really utilizing that neural network that. The neural network that is there inside your head. I mean, we are depending upon LLMs to do that stuff. I mean, you got a crazy LLM sitting out right here, right? But we tell them to do some, data entry work and all that. So the way we look at it is, it's very difficult to, if let's say there's an employee who's doing something like this, an activity like this, the example that I gave you, right? It's a fairly menial task. But that person has spent, let's say, 2 to 3 years in my organization, understands the organization culture exactly the way she mentioned, right? It's very difficult to get that curve going. It's a soft aspect, right? You know how the company works, you know how the policies work, you're embedded in the culture of the organization. That is serious value. I would rather retain that person and move that person to a higher value job. than to, lose that person. Let the LLM do the kind of work he or she is doing. I would rather have this person move up the value chain in terms of contribution to the organization. That's the way we look at the whole
I
space.
think that's a great role of leaders to play also.
Yeah, it is.
When I started my role at Jio, one of the tasks that I did was very menial. We had a project for 𝗂𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵 and we got images from 𝗂𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵's folks, 𝗂𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗵𝗿 playing, 𝗙𝗂𝗍𝗍𝗍 playing. And then what we used to do was we put up a model, like a YOLO object detection model, and do segmentation of it. So that was a very menial job, but I can very well define it. So
Just to give you another example, when you go, same example, the mobile phone seller, right? On the terminal, when you are navigating through, say, mobiles, Samsung, and then you say Samsung S25, there's a photo of the product that shows up over there, right? There was one person who was only, taking images from the websites and putting that up so that it gets uploaded onto the terminals. One person just doing this. He knocked it off, used GenAI for it. Okay, so that same person has now moved into product marketing and is contributing in a much better, manner than figuring out images for mobile phone models, and so it's a classic example.
So, Mr. 𝗔𝗍𝗍𝗪, I think for Godrej specifically, you were talking about for Innoviti, there are like GenAI applications that the guys at Innoviti are doing. What are the very recent GenAI application that we are doing at Godrej particularly? Maybe on e-commerce website or on their own website, if I want to buy a refrigerator or any other product related in Godrej. What are the GenAI implication if I want to see a refrigerator? Can I look at a VR of?
Yeah, sure. So I think talking specifically about Godrej here, I think we are looking at a very wide spectrum, because I think Godrej Enterprises, I think there is another group which also deals with consumer products and properties, etc. But I'm more talking about the enterprise group which is into a very niche manufacturing, heavy manufacturing and appliances like refrigerator and washing machine. So I think we are looking at a wide spectrum here. So maybe let me try to divide that. Okay, so that will give you a better perspective. So one is like any other business, there is a consumer in front of you. So some of the touch points that we have with customers and end consumers for that matter also, right? I think that is the place where we are trying to basically use artificial intelligence in terms of how we can interact more smoothly, how we can interact more holistically in terms of the customer profile that we are maintaining across multiple businesses. So when I talk about Godrej Enterprise Group, it's a group of 14 different businesses, okay, ranging from BrahMos missile to appliances, to be honest, okay. So the different kind of customer profiles, B2B, B2C, and so on and so forth. So it's a slightly complex picture, but across all businesses, I think the common theme probably is the end consumer and those touch points. And for some of the very consumer-centric businesses, I think we are looking at opportunities to automate the interaction in terms of e-commerce channels, the kind of empowerment, conversation interfaces where I think certain, for example, just to give you a flavor of it, some discount can be offered just based on
history.
Yeah, customer interaction and the web history and the manner in which the loyalty has been shown, etc. So agentic interface, we precise technically. So we are looking at those kind of agentic interfaces. Then if we just little bit come back in terms of the value chain, right? Set of corporate functions, right? And I think those are pretty common use cases across finance, HR. The complexity arises because of the mesh of different businesses acting together, etc. So the use cases might be slightly different here and there compared to other organizations, but that is a very, very standard area in terms of financial reporting, people engagement that HR uses, the sentiment analysis and stuff like that. So that is one of the domains. You can take it like a corporate functions. The interesting applications that we are trying to build are on the core manufacturing. we are trying to leverage not only GenAI. So the thing is like some of the GenAI capabilities are still maturing. So I think, sorry, I'm getting into little more in details in terms of so let's take the case of something like computer vision. I think today we have something like vision language models, and the capabilities are still maturing. Okay, so some of the very niche specific use cases still need a specific handling rather than GenAI actually to get them executed, and that's we are closely watching this particular space. Like I think Siddharth talked about, there is an element of AI research that happens in every organization where, because there is so much of things happening and it's in complete metamorphosis, fast paced, complete metamorphosis, to constantly look at the abilities that new models are basically developing and at what price point and whether it meets the kind of security norms and stuff like that. So specific architectures that we are trying to devise for security purposes, basically not to use something like publicly available models, but to curate them and use on-premise and stuff like that for some of the data that we have. Alright. So on manufacturing side, there are a number of areas. So one of the areas is like quality control. Okay, which is in a way, and again this question can come like whether it's going to impact the human in jobs which are there on this. So the thing is that we're trying to go at the next level, which probably humans couldn't have got anywhere. So let me give you an example. So some of these defense equipment or the chemical chemical vessels that those are used under, which are operated under very high pressure and at a very high temperature sometimes, right? They need a very specialized testing. Okay, in terms of the material that is being used, the sustainability of material under adverse conditions, and therefore to test the end product. I mean, it's not a very human job. So there are already some machines like they do X-ray photography and radiological testing to find, even because even if it's a minute crack micron level, right? It could be quite dangerous. So one of the business units in Godrej also manufactures the casing for nuclear reactors. So you can imagine a fine crack which is invisible to your eyes, how it can. And then the thing is that it's not necessarily only a risk; it's a loss for company also. So if they manufacture and doesn't, there are complex norms around this in terms of how Indian government procures the defense equipment, or some of them that is export business as well. So it's a very costly mistake if at all something doesn't meet the quality. Okay, there is a rejection of that material, which is a very costly affair because raw material is also very costly in this case. Okay, so basically we are trying to look at how AI can help us to assist humans to do this testing. So it's called first time right. Okay, in the manufacturing sector. So the problems that we try to solve in terms of the actual physical touch point are more complex to solve for AI also. Okay, if you look at something like a white collar job of office automation, I think we are pretty good. We are pretty good. You can assume that 100% it can be replaced. Okay, but and that's the fun here. So if you have an expert electrician, it's very difficult for you to replace them. If you're just playing around Microsoft Office, I think your job is at risk. So that's just to give you a flavor in terms of the kind of use cases that we are looking at. So there's a wide variety out there.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll come back to Siddharth about what are the other, as I have talked about GenAI applications with the two gentlemen here, what are the certain GenAI use cases that happen at Motilal Oswal? That would be a question about GenAI. And the second one would be, how are you differing between the GenAI use cases and then traditional ML use cases? There's a debate happening that GenAI is like taking almost all the use cases now. People are focusing on it since it's the buzzword. But what about the traditional ML things, like the simple logistic regression as you were talking about? What are the percentages of projects going completely towards GenAI and going through, and the other ones going towards the traditional ML?
Fantastic and really good insights across the panel here. One thing to mention, right, if you take a step back, first I'll say second question first, right, in terms of Gen AI and traditional AI, right? Uh, I think there's merits in both, and if you think about the problem sets they solve, doesn't have to be always at odds to each other, right? So, for example, if you think about generative AI, it's got a lot to do with conversational aspect of it. So you could do the heavy lift, leveraging your traditional ML models, but use the Gen AI to make it explainable to help somebody who doesn't understand the detail, help them explain that, right? So, for example, if you're building a portfolio for a client, you can leverage ML models to help come up with an efficient model or an efficient portfolio, and could have tidbits, insights into it, but somebody who is not able to understand the model well or the portfolio well, you can put a conversational AI on top of that, which is more generated with a generative AI, and the conversation can happen, right? So I think the way the stack is getting laid out is not to be bifurcated in Gen AI versus classical AI, right? Because for me, that's the big umbrella, everything falls within that. It's more about how do we think about data, how do we think about transform data, how do we think about traditional models, and then how do you think about agents on the top. And sometimes you can call your classical AI models or ML models directly, and sometimes you can call it through Gen AI, depending upon the use case, right? So it really builds my stack up. I don't think of my stack as two very differentiated stack, at least in my world. So that's one question of yours. And the first question in terms of uh, how we are splitting up like the number of use cases from traditional ML, AI ML world versus Gen AI. Again, like the kind of problem statements we have ample problem statements from perspective of identifying our clients, building client personas, understanding their behavior, right? Those are all leveraged. Uh, they're all performed leveraging really our traditional AI, right? And on the other side, again, our customer service bots, our productivity developer co-pilots, so on and so forth, all is done leveraging your generative AI. So that's how some of my world splits up. I really think it's a spectrum of interdance between classical AI and generative AI, and not kept separately in my domain.
Yeah, perfectly. So in finance, of course, trust is the key, right? If an investor understands that an AI model is taking care of their portfolio or measuring certain things about it, how do you ensure that? How do you measure that AI's impact? I mean, how do you tell the customers that it's okay, it's fine, I mean, we can go through it, and there is again the trust would be the same as for a human intervening into it, and as compared to a AI model intervening into it.
Well, that's a very good question, and we always try to be on the side of responsible AI when it comes to our front-facing client products, because we are also in a very heavy regulated industry, right? So specifically for these kind of use cases, we play the same role like how Girish was mentioning in terms of keeping a human in the loop, right? We use our models to make the first drafts, make the first round of iteration, but then make sure that it gets verified, validated, and confirmed with advisors in between, so that they also understand what it's performing, if there is any risks and biases that's coming in from a model perspective. And I think that's a very good start, because we're building this data set as we are going through, and that will be further used and then training the model again.
Mr. 𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙗, you have led digital transformation, AI transformation at Godrej, right? And we're working at an enterprise level. Is there an example where AI insights directly overturned a traditional business decision? So is there an example from your journey where you have used increasingly AI models or the strategy using AI models to turn a traditional decision
Yeah.
what happens in business, right?
Yeah, sure. So I think first of all we need to a little bit understand in terms of what is this traditional model. Okay. When we talk about data or AI driven decisions being influenced or taken by the business. Okay. So historically, I think these decisions have been more of intuition driven, thumb rule driven. Okay. If you look at it in a probably nostalgic fashion now. So how the world has been operating is there have been some intuition, some thumb rules, some judgments, which probably for in some cases worked very well. In some cases they did not, and that's how we differentiated success from failure. Okay. And books being written on what are the 10 success rules and 15 success rules whatsoever, but if you really give it a little more thought, I think there's no such specific rule which can surely make you win or lose, right? So it has been some sort of circumstantial plus personal attributes or individual attributes. So that has been a traditional way of doing it. And that's the culture. It's sometimes called as hippo culture also. So one person making decisions and then others following it and stuff like that. Okay. As opposed to that, today data driven decision making or even AI driven decision making where you have actually analysis available at your fingertips in terms of to go into depth and appropriately take your decision on based on some evidence, right? So, and one of the examples I think when Pradeep spoke, he in fact recommended everyone not to focus on from day one on one metric which is called as ROI, and but to look at what is underlying that ROI. Okay, that's the change actually speaking here. Okay, and then maybe if you haven't doing it so far, don't blame yourself because the whole world has been doing it. And but obviously, very good advice that it's the world changing, so there is a modern way of doing it. Okay, so so that's the background. Now, when it comes to Godrej, I think the set of areas where I think we see more impact, and as Siddharth was saying, I think see, there is always a value aspect in terms of how the business is sponsoring some of these elements of where to apply AI, etc., etc. And as I said, so one of them is in terms of the financial planning, the revenue generation capability, or the decision with respect to that. Then there is also a customer related decision. So I think those are the prominent areas where I think we see probably more traction right now in terms of data driven or AI driven decision being applied. For example, something like using prediction or forecasting in terms of your planning in a whatever 30, 60, 90 days cycle or whatever. So that's one of the examples. Another example probably also is in terms of how we are investing in terms of the inventories and what could be the cash flow prediction in terms of what is going to happen. Some of the businesses are basically irregular in terms of their cash flows, or it's not a very regular cycle of okay, they are mostly project driven and stuff like that. So how does it work using basically historical data and any other events that contribute to the flow of money? So how to predict that and use it in planning is one of the examples. Another example is, as I said, some of them are very like quality oriented, and the specifications that they use to comply with the quality requirements are sometimes very huge. So those are not completely comprehensible by one or two or three senior level engineers who are actually working on the product. So maybe how to distill that into set of actionable items which are more practically can be applied to the situation and stuff like that. So that those are the areas where I think we see maximum traction today in terms of the influence of decision making. But we expect some of the areas like predictive maintenance, for example, to do a proactive decision making in terms of whether there is going to be a breakdown, is going to stop my production and stuff like that, right? Uh, so those are the kind of areas where we want. So what happens is it has been very reactive. It has been very reactive. Okay. And there could be some companies where they have like, and mostly those companies are like more like conveyor belt manufacturing. So everything automated, lights off factory actually. Yeah, dark factory, yes. So there it's pretty easy to implement this. But when it comes to a custom, so you don't have a fair idea in terms of how much of workload is going to happen, whether certain machine breakdown is going to affect me or not, etc. etc. So it's a combination of the kind of traditional plus newer approaches to bring high predictability around these areas. So I think increasingly we are going to see the influence in those areas. Yeah.
Similar question to you, Girish. So in fintech, it's a responsible field. I mean, people are very wary about it. How do you prioritize decisions when it comes to your area? What decisions need to be taken by a human in the loop, or the AI models? So how do you prioritize between both of them?
So, I briefly touched upon some cases because we are a highly regulated industry. We need humans in the loop, but work that is that can be fairly automated, but it's not being automated because the information was not structured. That is now moving into use cases where we are, where we are moving into GenAI based automation. The usual stuff of say building predictive models based on decently available data, structured data. Okay. When I mean, even when people used to in the past, I remember when when we used to talk of structured and unstructured data. Finally, it's just about whether the data is in tables or whether the data is coming in through, JSON objects or not. It's not really unstructured. I mean, real unstructured stuff is where people with bad English start writing you mails. Okay, and you still have to glean information and take the right decision based on that. That is truly unstructured. Okay, so those are the ones which we are able to get into. Certain things which I believe can move, but currently we are not doing is, let's say, product enhancements are still human, driven. Let's say I want a particular feature that still is coming in from the field. So it's a field feedback coming in from my merchant to my sales to my management, and then they evaluate and see, okay, is this something that adds value? And it becomes a feature, and then the engineering side of my work starts kicking in. That I think is probably something that can also move into the future, but today that is still human driven.
If I may just add, most innovation that happens is user innovation, especially in some products. So when we we have to be close to the customer. We have to have our ears. There's tremendous input we get, and innovation will actually happen. So this is, of course, the future, but present also. It's already happening. There are a whole lot of. In fact, I would maybe you're aware. There's a professor from MIT who talks of Professor 𝙗𝙗𝙗𝗵𝗿. He talks of open innovation, and open innovation is all about keeping your innovation open so that people are able to learn and access more, so that you get more user. There are some products, like HPLC and other products, where almost 90% of innovation is actually user contribution. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
It's true because it's almost like crowdsourcing, ideas from your community, and for us, it's our customer community which really bothered, right? So, and certain things that you think are important for your customer really not very important. They have businesses to run. They have to. In our case, for example, the mobile shop owner has to pay his distributor.
Yeah.
He wants to know where the next check is going to come from. So, one of the products that we built was to have an instant cash a movement into the merchant's account, because otherwise we used to always have a T+1 settlement. So that's something which we worked on over the last few months, and it's like it works beautifully because then you can see it. And we gave the beauty of it was in Innoviti we gave the control of when to turn this feature on and off to the merchant. I think that was the nuance that we picked. Okay, so that's something that our competition does not provide. So what happens is they need this feature when they're in a tight crunch and when towards the end of the month when they have to pay their distributors and have to cut checks, and then you need the cash really upfront rather than or during festival times. So getting a feature out is one thing, but the nuance that you give the control to your customer to turn that feature on and off is something which is something which we had to crowdsource from our customers. But it's an interesting case where I don't know how we will even get this information if we don't talk and we don't have a feedback loop. So yeah, that's one example that I could share.
So in this kind of a feature for merchant side, for example, as you're saying, you can on and off, put it on and off accordingly. So what is the adoption of it? I mean, and from where did you come to arrive at this decision that we need to pick this feature up and put it into our product and this will be adopted? I mean, is it again AI driven? You saw the data, you saw people need money in immediately, not in T+1 settlement sort of a setting.
That's the thing, right? So that part of it, yes, we picked from data. But the fact that they needed this flexibility and it's something that they were not getting with others was something that was purely driven from merchant feedback, from talking to our customers. And that did not come from any data, that came from field intelligence. And that's the interesting part. How do you pick that? Where are they even expressing this? No, these thoughts are just in their mind and in their own community when they talk to each other. It's only when you speak to them that they start, giving this information to you. And without information, what can we do? I mean, in our space, there's only so much we can do. So, but however, now what we're doing is we're using this data and we're looking at patterns. You see, when do they turn it off? When do they turn it on? And then to figure out why are these merchants behaving like this versus these merchants, they're behaving in a completely different way. And if the adoption is high here, how can I find more such merchants? That's where we start playing our role.
So this was one question about generative AI. Are there any products being done at Innoviti which involves multi-agent frameworks particularly? So, I mean, the next thing about after LLMs has been multi-agent AI frameworks, putting up into agents, then they might themselves take decisions on their own. Has there been any product at Innoviti which has employed that kind of technology?
We haven't moved entirely into Agentic AI yet. It's a bit tricky, leaving in our line at least, leaving everything like I mentioned earlier to a bunch of agents talking to each other, passing information across, and finally giving an executed output. But can we get there in certain use cases? Probably we can. There's a very interesting use case that I'm very keen on, and that's something I'm sure Siddharth and 𝙗𝙗, but all of you, in fact, it's a question that you guys should all be thinking quite deeply. Is 2 years down the line, why would I want to hire any of you guys? Right? It's a tough one. So why would I want to hire you? I would want to hire you guys because you are the ones who will build my agentic stack. Okay. Today I have for different products I have different squads. Okay, when it comes to developing my product, my software product. So I have my developer. Okay, I have my architect. So the user story comes in. So my product user story is written by a product manager. Okay. The concept comes from management. This user story is written by the product manager. And then if there is a UI element, my UI guys come in, they build UIs, it's embedded into the product user story. I'm just explaining the way a feature gets developed in the software industry, right? And then you have your architect who looks at the user story, converts that into a technical user story. Okay, the bus becomes a task as we call it. And then it's explained to the developers, they start doing their coding. Okay, and then it's reviewed. The code that they write is reviewed by the architect. There is a go, no go, and then it goes into deployment. Then I have what I call the SRE team, because these are the guys who do the production release of your code, which is checked into, let's say, a Git repository, and that goes into production. And then there is of course, I missed the most important point. There's a lot of QA testing that happens of what you have built. And then when it goes into production, there's a production testing that happens, and then it's finally said that it's released. So that you can imagine this entire cycle of product development. Why would I not want to move that into the agentic space? Right? That is something I'm very keen on. Of course, with some there will be human interventions in between, but I want to reduce my cycle time to even creating the user story. You can actually and this is exactly what GenAI is built for. You just tell it, okay, these are the features, write a product user story. It does a beautiful job of it. Give me UI, give me the UI screens for it. It will do a beautiful job of it. And when you think about it and you're thinking in sequence, you'll actually realize what the heck, it can actually build the entire thing end to end. It's just that we don't trust it enough today. I can't stake my job on it today. And that's the reason why I'm not doing it. But it's a matter of time. I think that's a classic use case for me of Agentic AI.
Has there been a similar at Godrej about the same kind of a perspective for agentic frameworks at Godrej?
Yes. So, yeah, sure. There is a perspective, obviously, but just to, kind of react to what Siddharth was saying, and I think I was probably a little moved by what he explained exactly. So, I think, and I was going to say the same thing, like maybe whatever you are describing, probably everything done by agents, except for probably only one element of it, the innovative ideation behind the product. Yeah, at the start, and maybe a verification, human verification in the end, because humans will use it, right? So I think, sorry, I'm a little bit delaying the answer to your question, just in order to react to you. But and he quite interestingly referred to everyone. You asked everyone to think about it, and probably we need to think it beyond this room also. In terms of where do we stand, so we have been projecting India as superpower of IT, which probably meant the work that agents can do today. So we are not really standing at that spectrum of value chain. We were never there. That's the problem. That's the problem, and that's how I was talking to Pradeep before this came in here, and that's how China can actually make DeepSeek ecosystem. Despite India being an English-speaking country and having so much of talent in software engineering and stuff like that, without probably using NVIDIA GPUs and stuff like that, right? Different kind of techniques and tactics. So I think we need to break our barriers and think out of the box, right? If you really want to get hired at a very good roles, actually, okay, or lead this particular transformation, not necessarily at the organization level, but entire at the market level, probably just to complete the whole thought process that he laid out. Okay, coming to your question in terms of multi-agenting, so I think see, what do you expect? What do you expect the multi-agents will do? So see, the action that you see as a manifestation coming out of any particular system or an artificial intelligence system, etc. You may never realize whether it's one agent or multiple agents in the background. So today, I can tell you a couple of things that you must be already doing. Okay, go to maybe ChatGPT. I think there's a limited model of using ChatGPT 4.0, 4.1, and then they degrade after certain time. So maybe let's talk about Gemini or Anthropic or Claude, etc. So when you ask some questions to these tools, okay, and I don't know, you must be asking a lot of questions, but if you really ask some serious questions with some context and all that, okay, ask to prepare something like Excel file or table or something like that. What do you think? It's a single agent or multi-agent? You never know. Because what is happening in the background could be a multi-agentic system. For example, Perplexity is one of the good examples. It's an Indian guy who built that company, right? In US though, but so I think it's indistinguishable whether one agent is acting or multiple agents are acting. Okay. So that particular decision is something which is basically may not be at the surface level. So there are situations where we may have to use multiple agents because there are distinct tasks. And just to give you a simple example, so using generative AI, for example, so the value of generative AI is look at this in a slightly different perspective. Okay, so what is the value of generative AI for that matter? So generative AI is like maybe a brain, not yet reached to that level. Okay, it's not AGI. It's not AGI. It's still. I mean, it's mimicking. It's mimicking
Cannot reach.
intelligence to a very great degree. Okay, but there is a reasoning power in the model. Okay, now think of a person who has a very good intellectual capacity but has not learned anything at all, not reading even a book or something like that. What is the value of that intellect? Not much. Not much. It's a talent wasted. Same is the case with the AI models. So they work only based on the knowledge that you are able to impart. They are just taking the whole world knowledge from all the open sources in the world, but that knowledge is not a I mean, what do you call it? Like a competitive differentiator. You can use it, I can use it, any organization can use it, small, medium, big. Okay. What differentiates the capability of the holistic system is the kind of essential kind of knowledge on which you can really build a competitiveness. Okay, so if I have some knowledge specifically on medicines and my model uses that knowledge, okay, that's creating a value. Okay, so it's knowledge plus reasoning. Okay, point number one. Now, taken any system to basically digitize this knowledge, store it, make it accessible, to be able to recall. These are all distinct steps within the system. Okay. And most likely, I mean, see, I believe that nowadays, whatever I read and the emailers and stuff like that, everybody talks about RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So I think it's a fashion, but let's be honest here, RAG is not a silver bullet, okay? Because the linear RAG may not work. So many of these tasks actually may have to be done as a different agentic activities. So for example, encoding of knowledge, right, into a specific structure. It can be a specialized job in terms of, so as a manifestation, what you are doing is you are asking some question, you are getting some answer in the background. So that's the way we are approaching it. Okay. So agents will never appear, a lot of them may not appear on the surface. But just to give you a use case example here, as I was talking about some of these projects which are heavy manufacturing or precision manufacturing, right? These contracts are not like our regular contracts, like they don't last 1 or 2 years, okay? They're very, very long, like 10, 15 years. The projects are like that. So, for example, if India today decides to develop an indigenous fighter plane like Rafale, okay, you take it like it's a 10, 15-year project, maybe. Okay, it's a very long-term contract that they do. Okay, there's a lot of research and experimentation that goes on behind it. Okay, so just imagine responding to a contract which is like 15 years ahead of time today, in terms of estimation, accounting for inflation, what could be the cost. It's a difficult job. So it's a team of people who do that by spending sufficient amount of time. Okay, and how to accelerate that. So that's a use case where probably multiple agents could help us. Okay, so we are looking at building it. So we haven't deployed anything in production so far. Okay, so that's about it. One of the examples I think you can look at is, nowadays I'm quoting China examples a lot. I think the world is, I think, little bit fluctuating in towards eastern side. Probably it's becoming little heavier. Look at this Manus AI. If you haven't looked at it, okay, it's a multi-agentic question answering system. So it's a Chinese company. Okay, so
Yeah, similar question also. So, has there been any implementation of the again same agentic frameworks as we're talking about, since it's a buzz after LLMs, maybe parallel with LLMs? Has there been anything at Motilal Oswal regarding multi-agentic frameworks?
Um, I think if you design the agent world right, again, if you come back to the stack we spoke about, at the bottom you have the data, again, structured, unstructured, massively unstructured, right? Then you have your transform data, you have your models, and on top of that, you have build your agents, right? And I think the multi-agentic world is very much at reach because now it's about agent to agent communication, and that can be done through more recently. I'm sure all of you have been reading about something called MCP, right, which is your model context protocol, right? So a lot of these things are becoming more evident, and yeah, we are gearing towards it. We have a lot of agents created. Now we're trying to make sure, based on the use case, which agents make sense to have conversation with each other and connect with each other to bring down the use cases.
Okay. Apart from this, so this is the question for all three of you. We have talked about LLMs, we have talked about multi-agentic frameworks. What about quantum computing? Like there have been buzz around that too. So do you think at an enterprise level or at the domain-specific level, we do see any application of quantum computing?
Right. See, right now it's not an immediate thing for us. And it's still in the works, and there's nothing that's come up. In fact, one of my principal AI scientists is also my product architect. He's doing his PhD in quantum computing. Okay, so we are kind of keeping ourselves in the space, but right now, from in terms of practical applications, it's still somewhere, right? GenAI is keeping our hands full as it is. As you guys would have realized, Anthropic has come out with Claude 4, and as we speak, my AI scientist is replugging all her code into and mapping it to Claude 4 and Opus 4, and apparently it allows you to do real-time web searches also. The APIs allow you to do that, so that's brilliant. I mean, it opens up a lot of use cases for us which are otherwise not. So it's got our hands full. But what's it going to do for us? And in my discussions with my architect, and this is what we've come up with, it's going to explode computational capacity, speed, right? That's the final output that it's going to throw. It's something that I mentioned earlier in this institute. Optimization. It's my favorite topic, and I've been exhorting the faculty here to focus on optimization. It's something that is not taught and it's not focused on a lot. People generally will tend to, how do you build XGBoost models, predictive models in XGBoost and so on. But very few people teach you how to use, say, linear programming to do optimization. So it's either allocation optimization, route optimization. These are brilliant use cases. You can actually bring in multiple predictive models and have an optimizer on top. Trust me, in one of the use cases that I did this in Innoviti, for every service engineer, so we have to send somebody to service these terminals, right? So there were 4 million permutations and combinations per service officer of ours that I had to run on a daily basis. So the whole run, while I'm running it across 8 cores, okay, so the algo runs across multiple cores, it takes close to an hour. So I run it like once in the morning and once in the evening. Okay, so the ones stragglers which are not captured in the evening run get captured in the next day morning run, and then we do our allocation and our route planning. Now imagine if that can happen in seconds, on the fly, as stuff is happening on the field. I'm optimizing in real time. That's something I can't even think of today. It's beyond my expectations and imagination. It just opens up real-time optimization as a use case to the whole world. Okay, so that's one thing that I can think of, and I'm really excited. On the flip side, what I'm very often I'm worried about with quantum computing is, will our current encryption, algos and methods that we use stand, the onslaught of a quantum computing based, brute force attempt to decrypt, which means that we may have to move our encryption to be quantum computing proof. I think that's the other side. So there's a plus and there is a wariness that we are looking at least in our space. I think that's broadly two things that I thought I could talk about from a roadmap point of view.
So your views.
Yeah, so definitely somehow I think I would have expected this topic of quantum computing to be more popular with the industries who are involved into the core material and stuff like that. But somehow financial folks are leading that. I don't either because there is a lot of money involved. Or you need a lot of parallelization, but in the end, why do you need the parallelization? Because there is money involved in this. so I think so. Jokes apart, but I think the manner in which quantum computing is progressing probably is accelerating day by day. So I think it was maybe last few months back, like 5 to 6 months back, I think they reached the capacity of something like 40 qubits. And I think they're just 60 qubits away. So I think it's less than 50% progress right now. But once they reach probably a little higher than 100%, it's a alarming situation in terms of public key cryptography, like you said. Yeah. So that's the first impact. Okay, but that's not an AI impact, so to say. That's a general technology impact. Okay. In terms of AI, the benefit that it's going to have offer is like the parallelization, and I think that's where we have today. If you see, the bottleneck is in terms of the processing power. Okay, so I think that will create a huge impact on the artificial intelligence as such. Yeah.
Siddharth, your views on quantum computing. As to add to your point, sir, I was reading somewhere JP Morgan has already provided some quantum algorithm to strengthen their security. There was a report that they have developed a quantum algorithm to be securing their entire security thing.
So I was trying to personally do some research on this. I think, see, you do not necessarily need quantum computing by itself to protect the systems from quantum computing. Okay, that is one of the ways. Yeah. That is, it's only asymmetric cryptography where basically you are asking somebody to guess what is my key. And quantum computing can do huge number of operations compared to your normal silicon-based computing. So I think there are other techniques also. So most of the cloud providers, I think they are already taking care of the kind of key. So there are 2-3 ways. I mean, simplistic ways like increasing the length of key from 128 bit to 256 bit. It is one of the very easiest options. Using something like symmetric encryption is another option, and then obviously the third option is to use the quantum key by itself, so that it's unbreakable. Yes.
Something which
yes.
Which is
yeah, but see, the problem is not that. So it is like Y2K problem. If you have heard about it, right? Yeah, we would have heard of it. Yeah. So it's not because it cannot be done. It's only because it has not been done. So people may not take care of it and then will remain vulnerable. Don't worry, we have another big project coming in maybe in a few years. No, but humans to keep in job.
So that's your views for the same thing.
I'll probably keep it a little short. I think it's a bit of crawl, walk and run, right? We're still crawling with making sure our focus is on AI. It really goes silent and enterprise, right? So I think that's where our focus is right now. Obviously, we're not getting blindsided by it. We are constant monitoring it and understanding where it can be leveraged. But that's where we are, just on a monitoring phase. Nothing particularly taking any initiative thereof.
Perfectly. So, yeah, I mean, that would be it. We have been trying to cover GenAI, LLMs, agentic frameworks, and quantum computing. Let's open the floor for questions if you have any for any of our experts. Let's go. Shoot him. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
You are, but just a second. Just give me one second.
Yeah, I'm, I'm audible, right? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is 𝗍𝗓𝙗𝙗, and my question is to Mr. Girish. Sir, given your leadership in engineering and data platforms, I would like to ask what are some key architectural and engineering considerations? Like we have talked before right now, but with respect to in the particular context of modern data engineering practices, what are the key architectural considerations when building a scalable and secure data infrastructure for a fintech application? Like, for example, Siddharth sir talked about uh, developers using Copilot. You talked about from production to human verification and building AI in all the production sites. So this is.
Is your question limited to data engineering per se?
Yeah.
Just data engineering part of it, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Um, I don't know whether I can. I mean, there's something very proprietary. It's something that we are doing internally, but we have changed the way we have done data engineering specifically to cater to GenAI use cases. Just to give you an example, so the usual way of doing data engineering is you do run your typical ETL activities, what we call extract, transform, and load. So you basically figure out where all your data is across the organization, and then you have ETL jobs which will keep extracting the data, dumping it into a data lake or a data warehouse or a data lake, right?
Right.
And then there are the usual, you dump your old data into an S3, stack, a repository in say in Amazon and so on. The usual, ways of doing things. In fact, it's become usual now. It used to be a big thing not too long ago, but we have changed the concept, and we are now looking at data as every piece of data as a stream. Okay, it's something that we have changed in our at least with our newer products. So our ETL is not data going into tables and then you move data out of tables. It's basically data moving as streams to a message queue, and at the data engineering side of, so we have the application side, you have the data engineering side, right? The application is generating data streams. So we take all this data, we pipe it to a message queue, and we subscribe. The data engineering side is now subscribing to a message queue rather than querying a table. And it is creating, and that part of it I don't want to share too much, but that's something that's proprietary. And the way we persist the data is also different. Okay, so that's a completely different way of doing data engineering. We've done this in the last 1 year. And as we see new product lines coming up, we are automatically, even our legacy product lines, we are switching to this mode. That every piece of data is not a row in a table. Every piece of data is being generated because some human being or a proxy of a human being is doing some action on some system and is creating a stream of data. Right? So that's a mind shift that we have brought in.
Thank you for taking my question, sir.
Thank you. Next.
Hello everyone, Abhijit this side. So my question is to Siddharth sir. How is Motilal Oswal making use of AI to enhance its already optimized trading platform, and what future enhancement does the company want to incorporate?
Yeah, so for Motilal Oswal, from a trading platform, right, we look at how do we optimize quick trade programs through AI, right? In terms of also understanding who our clients are, what their portfolio requirements are, what they like to trade in, and help uh, share that with our client folks, right? So it's a lot of personalization, like I was sharing, in terms of our clients understanding different investment vehicles. That's where most of the uh, client experience is being put together from an AI perspective. That's one key area of focus. And the second key area of focus is there's also a component of regulation and reconciliation. And what we mean by that is before a trade gets placed, there is actually an OTP pass, there is a confirmation of the trade to be made. Before AI was there, a lot of times these confirmations are just in terms of calls, right? There used to be somebody listening and making sure on the call transcripts, actually the trades are being made of what trades have been asked for. So now that's been changed leveraging AI, where we are reconciling this through using natural language processing to understand the trade that's actually placed is actually what our clients asked for. So that's a big way. Just think about the productivity enhancement that we have after we have put that in place. Thanks.
Thank you for asking my question, sir.
Thank you for your question. Audience. Yeah, please.
So hi everyone, my name is Jairaj. My question is to Siddharth sir. I wanted to ask that in the recent times we have been listening to the increasing use of blockchain. Even RBI has been launching 𝗂𝗏 which is based out of blockchain. So I just wanted to ask that can we build a use case out of agentic AI and blockchain which will be securing the financial documents and those kind of stuff? Because it can be a use case. So I just wanted to, I'm curious about it.
Absolutely. I think this is another of those fields, right? You have AI in one lane, we have blockchain in the other lane, and then quantum computing is pushing from the back end, right? I think we'll be at a point when a lot of these starts converging, right? Right now, AI is thought of as separate and we're focusing on it, right? But blockchain and AI will start converging and the power of blockchain will further improve that. And I think quantum computing will only enable with fast speed given uh, the kind of proof of validity you have to do using blockchain across all the people who are putting that together, right? So I think there are use cases. Again, crawl, walk, run mindset. We are very focused on enabling our current use cases that we have already identified and can already enable big wins for us, but also trying to understand when the blockchain is headed. Number one. Number two is how soon will the regulations change around it, right? And then third one is how do we integrate in our use cases. So we are trying to keep an eye out on it, but still early days, like a lot of these emerging things. Thank you for the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you for attempting.
Just an addition to what, if you just pick what Siddharth very rightly mentioned right at the end, is that we start from the use cases and figure out which technology to use. Rather than saying, hey, there's this fancy technology, let's start now inventing use cases for it in the organization. Nobody in the management has that, a bandwidth, because everything comes at a cost, and it's both cost in terms of rupees and cost in terms of time. So just because, and I think there's a previous question when to use ML and AI, I think you had asked. It's the use case, right? Is it worth burning tokens in an LLM versus writing a simple XGBoost model at my end, right? And just using it as static model, because these are the considerations. So we keep getting asked, these questions: why do you use this technology versus another? As long as the use case, justifies the technology, we use it.
Any other question, please? Right? I think it's also about the balance. I mean, you need to have a very good tab on what kind of project you like to go into production, and then also have a very sharp balance about what new technology you want to try.
Abhijit again this side. So last question from my side. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that co-pilots are being used in the developers field. So and the productivity increase is being measured. Being from a background of development, in my company too, co-pilots were being used, and I haven't seen much of increasing in my productivity. So I really wanted to know what's the output or the what's the actual percentage that the productivity increase has happened.
I think some of these are proprietary data right now that we cannot share outside yet, right? But I think more of it to think from perspective of you have different levels of experts, right? You have experts, you have mid-level experts, and then you have much junior resources. Where you find something's more effective, which needs more assistance, and which is at much junior level resources, right? Somebody who's an expert, they may look at co-pilots of such and use it, not use it, have that kind of intuition, right? They work well. A mid-level come in between, but the junior level developers who are anyways going out there, searching on the web, trying to identify from, if not co-pilots, ChatGPT or the other methods on the web to really search and solve for it, right? So it's really assistance for them. So if you think big portion of them is the junior developers, how can it help them enable and be more productive? But good question again. Some of these things are internal data, so we'll keep it at that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
One last question, guys. Something about breathe or something. Not proprietary data question.
Given the current scenarios, what are the skill sets you are looking from the students, especially passed out from different technology? Yeah, so given the current scenarios in the industry and organizations, there are a lot of things are changing. And the phase that the change is happening, what are the skill sets you are looking from the current passed out students or people who are done non-technical work earlier but now has a passion to convert their career into AI and DS? What the exact skill sets you are looking from a non-technical person who want to do a job in a technical person, job like AI and DS?
All of us, I guess. Yeah. So, look, I think I can speak for all three of us that back in the day, we did have an organization like Geo Institute, which actually, took the data science and AI and made a course out of it, and actually formally gave this knowledge, as a course. We used to only dream of this. I'm an electrical engineer. We all come from, these kind of. We learned on the job. Okay. Today, for example, I was trying some stuff and there was a Motilal algorithm. I have never learned, and now I have to go back and start figuring out what it means, right? So, whereas you guys will come pre-learned and do not, and a lot of people they use, say Copilot or use LLMs to write code, but if you don't understand what code has been spat out by the LLM, you are in deep trouble, man. I'm telling that is the reason why I will hire you guys. Right, as against somebody who is good, has great English writing skills, and just use an LLM and just throw some code my way. You guys really know what the code is doing behind the scenes, and you can make the right tweaks, or for that matter, even make the right tweaks within the LLM interface itself to get the right code out, because you understand, because you know what is happening behind the scenes. And I think that's the great plus that you guys are going to get here.
Yeah, I think completely agree with you. Just to add here, I think 2 points. So one is So what is so if, for example, if you have to play a game against a ace player maybe or equivalent player, just like we watch movies or we watch in sports also, I think they study the opponent players' tactics the most, I think. So I think the point that you made in terms of the forecasting probably, what is that model does and maybe what are the limitations of that, I think will be key to understand here. Okay, so you are playing against AI in terms of the job. We can take it like that, right? So when time comes, so you may have to understand the limitations and where exactly you can defeat that actually, right? In terms of your skills. So that is one point. Second point is to upfront tell you, I think AI will, the manner in which it is right now, the state of art or in the state that it is, okay. Probably it is capitalizing a lot on history, right? So what it is doing is crunching all the data from past and telling you that, okay, based on this history, then something will happen, right? The originality, creativity is the domain still with us. So I think, and probably the innovation, which is a side effect of originality and creativity nevertheless. So I think that is where probably there is a huge opportunity to show the difference in terms of a person who has mastered maybe 100 AI tools and has become an Iron Man or something like that in the world of yeah. So versus a person who is having the understanding of the nuances of where probably something will work, something will not. So
Your views?
All those are great answers. I'll just add 3 points to it. Very good critical skills, and what I mean by that is not only knowing how to use the models like rightly called out by Girish and Shiva, but also understanding the details of the model and asking when you're put on a task, asking why you're doing what you're doing, and really understanding in detail, right? So having that very critical thinking is very important. Second, I would say is learning to learn, right? This space changes when we sleep. By the time we wake up, there's a newer model out there, there's a newer methodology out there. So you have to be willing to learn and learn to learn. And because the domain also shifts. So really being very agile, I think will put you right there. And a program like this really has the foundations for that, right? And third and most important thing, I think, in the very beginning of this conclave, it was mentioned that have the passion first, right? So, given we are in such a space where we enjoy what we are doing, know that when you are not working towards it, there's 100 other people trying to learn fast, be more smarter about it, and come up to space because they're passionate about it, right? So, if you're in for a salary versus in for learning, I think the outcomes will be very different. So, those are 3 things I'm highly can involve.
Thank you for answering.
It is my honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of all of us who attended the AI and Data Science Conclave today. A special thanks to all our distinguished panelists, 𝙑𝙗𝙗𝙗, Senior Executive Group VP and Chief AI Officer, Motilal Oswal Financial Services Limited, Girish Varadarajan, Head Engineering and Data Platform, Innovative Technologies, 𝗔𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙗, Majumdar, Head AI and Intelligent Automation, Godrej Enterprise Group, who shared their expertise on themes like data-driven leadership, strategic decision-making with AI, personalization at scale, and the future of data strategy and more. Your thought-provoking discussions have provided us with valuable takeaways that we can apply to our professional journeys. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the student placement team, Office of Academic and Career Services, who work tirelessly behind the scenes. Your dedication is what ensured the seamless execution of today's event. As we conclude, let us carry forward the spirit of innovation, collaboration, and learning that we have experienced today. Together, we can redefine what is possible with data and technology. Thank you all once again, and we look forward to meeting you at future events. Let's stay connected and continue to inspire one another. Have a wonderful day.